When you think of Godzilla's biggest enemy, you think of either Mechagodzilla or Ghidorah. And for the few that think it's destroy it, just stop. No. He only appeared in one movie and just got folded. With a total of 9 incarnations that feature him against Godzilla, Ghidorah almost always requires other kaiju to aid Godzilla in battle to even be brought down. Hello everyone, I'm everyone's favorite government agency, FDA, and today we're going to be pitting 2 of the strongest live-action Ghidorahs head-to-head and determining who would win in a fight. In the left corner, coming in at 140 meters in height and weighing 100,000 metric tons, being one of the largest incarnations of Ghidorah, we have Keizer Ghidorah. In his respective film, he absolutely ragdolled Final Wars and had him on the verge of death, requiring Godzilla to be amped in order to break free of Ghidorah's grasp and win the fight. In the opposite corner, standing at 158 meters in height, being the largest live-action Ghidorah, weighing it at 141,000 tons, we have the Monster vs. Ghidorah, or as many people refer to him as Monster Zero. Monster Zero very impressively overpowered and amped Godzilla and required Godzilla to enter a thermonuclear state for him to finally be brought down. Both Ghidorahs have been shown to be very strong, easily overwhelming their respective Godzillas, but which of these 2 would come out on top in a fight? We're going to be covering a total of 10 categories, which consist of strength, speed, agility, physical capabilities, ranged weaponry, durability, regeneration, intelligence, battle intelligence, and finally, abilities. As always, let's remind everyone that outlandish statements with no backing whatsoever will not be taken into account. And just one more thing to add on, due to Keizer not showing enough stuff, due to living like a total of 4 minutes, we'll be using some of the feats of Monster X that intertwine with Keizer Ghidorah. Without further ado, let's jump right in. Starting off, we have strength. Keizer Ghidorah was shown to absolutely ragdoll Final Wars in their fight, but there's a catch. In this very brief ass whooping, Keizer's anti-gravity beams were mainly utilized to hurl Final Wars around. Keizer only managed to kick the 55,000 metric ton Final Wars Godzilla into a building and pick him up with all 3 heads to siphon his energy. Monster Zero shows much more impressive feats of strength. In his brief fight against Godzilla in Antarctica, he was able to knock over Godzilla by slamming his heads into him. In their battle in Boston, Ghidorah was able to drive back and eventually briefly pick up Godzilla and slam him into the ground. His most impressive showing of strength being that he easily managed to lift, with only his tail as support, while flapping his wings obviously, the 99,000 ton Godzilla up to the stratosphere. To add on, while Godzilla was on the ground when siphoning his energy, he lifted up Godzilla with the use of his heads. Without a doubt, Monster Zero does indeed take our first point with strength. Speed. Monster X was shown to be insanely fast and agile, being able to land multiple strikes on Godzilla. But when he transformed into Keizer Ghidorah, he traded this speedy and agile nature for more power and durability, providing an upgrade to this hardened exoskeleton. His only showing of sprinting was very briefly sprinting towards Godzilla on the ground, and keep in mind, this was a very short distance. While Keizer Ghidorah comes with a set of wings, they serve just absolutely no purpose because he didn't even fly. While yes, he does fly in comics such as Godzilla Rage Across Time, this is not canon and not applicable to the actual Final Wars verse. It's similar to how Godzilla in Godzilla in Hell is represented as the design of Kiryugoji. While they're visually the same Godzilla, they're also not at the same time. Keizer Ghidorah was able to briefly sprint towards Final Wars, but this pales in comparison to his opponent's feats. Obviously, speed would go to Monster Zero, as he for one can actually fly, that being at a speed of just over 600 miles per hour, being Mach 8, and that he can sprint at speeds up to 300 miles per hour, as shown when they clash in Boston. Next up is agility. Once again, Keizer Ghidorah just seemingly stands there. As mentioned before, he briefly charges or sprints, whatever you want to call it, towards Final Wars before he latches onto Godzilla to siphon his energy. Once again, due to Keizer's showing of agility being just almost non-existent, this category easily goes to Monster Zero, as he's able to maneuver his necks at insane speeds, being able to even dodge Godzilla's atomic breath. Ghidorah's agility allows him to compete with an amped Godzilla, as he's able to quickly advance towards Godzilla and once again utilize his necks as basically elongated arms. Physical capabilities. As usually with King Ghidorah, he lacks arms, but instead has 2 other necks along with his main head to use as arms. Keizer Ghidorah, as mentioned before, mainly utilizes his anti-gravity beams. His showings of his physical aspect is when he's able to lift his front pair of legs and stomp on Godzilla repeatedly. He was able to kick Godzilla into a building, siphon his energy, and lastly, able to lift him up with his 3 necks. This is legit everything until he gets bodied by Keizer and Godzilla. Monster Zero, very similar to Keizer, is able to clamp down on all 3 of his heads and lift Godzilla and slam him onto the ground. His necks, when slammed against Godzilla, were able to knock him over completely. He's able to wrap around Godzilla with efficiency, and just like with Keizer, was able to siphon energy from Godzilla. While Monster Zero shows more impressive showings of physical weaponry against an overall more powerful Godzilla, they both have the same arsenal when it comes to their overall physical capability, so it is indeed a tie. Following physical capabilities, we have ranged weaponry. Keizer Ghidorah comes with a special variant of Ghidorah's typical gravity beams we all know, known as the anti-gravity beams. These anti-gravity beams, while they seemingly did no visible damage to Final Wars Godzilla, not only overpowered Godzilla's atomic breath, but sent him flying all over the place, even managing to lift him in the air, seemingly manipulating the gravity. Monster Zero, on the other hand, has your standard gravity beams. These gravity beams are able to be charged up and fired quite quickly, being able to punish Godzilla's missed atomic breath with a shot of gravity beams. These gravity beams seem to be quite powerful, being able to briefly incapacitate Rodan with only a single head's firing for a brief period of time, and he was able to knock over and push Godzilla into the hole that Ghidorah climbed out of. It was also able to burn Godzilla's skin and very slightly cut into it. Keep in mind, Monster vs. Godzilla is insanely durable. Ghidorah, only after a couple of seconds, was able to completely disintegrate Mothra. Ghidorah's gravity beams aren't the only thing in Monster Zero's arsenal. He's able to release lightning from the tip of his wings in all directions, managing to blind Godzilla and cut into his skin. Keizer's anti-gravity beams may seem to be the better of the two, but keep in mind, these anti-gravity beams didn't seem to do any visible damage to Final Wars, rather just throw him around. Not to mention, Keizer will be fighting a much heavier opponent in Monster Zero who weighs more than double Final Wars Godzilla. Even if these beams could pick up Monster Zero, he can fly and provide heavy resistance if Keizer tries to drag him with these beams. With Monster Zero having more options than just gravity beams, and Monster Zero most likely barely being affected by these anti-gravity beams, ranged weaponry is a tie. Durability. Starting with Keizer Ghidorah, obviously we can use Monster X's durability and apply it to Keizer, as Keizer would amplify this further. Monster X, in his fight against Godzilla, took a multitude of punches directly to the face from Godzilla, who is very impressive in regards to strength. Moving on to his new improved self, this is where it gets a bit weird. In his fight against Godzilla, he absolutely ragdolled him, with Godzilla landing 0 hits on him whatsoever. When Godzilla got amped, he redirected one of Keizer's own beams back out the other head, which completely blew it off. Keep in mind, these beams are the same beams where he's shown to directly overpower Final Wars' normal beam, yet do no visible damage to him whatsoever, yet his own beam completely cut off one of his own heads. Moving on to Monster Zero. In his fight with Godzilla in Antarctica, he received multiple blows from Godzilla yet remained unscathed. In his fight against Amp Godzilla, he was tossed, slammed through a building, tail whipped, and even more, yet received no visible injury whatsoever. He took a direct beam from Godzilla at point blank range, and while yes it blew him back over 1,000 meters, he withstanded the beam for an insane amount of time while only suffering burns. Keep in mind, this is an Amp Godzilla's beam. The reasoning? His skin is covered in gold, as extra protection with his insane hide on top of that, making it very hard to pierce his skin. One thing we do have to know is Godzilla ripping off Monster Zero's head. This occurred in the water, Godzilla's element, and Ghidorah was clearly outmatched, which explains how easily Godzilla was able to rip off his head. Monster Zero is so durable, in fact it took Godzilla a second amp when he went thermonuclear, and even then he endured 2 pulses before being stomped on and eventually disintegrated by Godzilla. While Keizer Ghidorah is definitely durable, Monster Zero is definitely the much more durable opponent. Regeneration. This will quite clearly go to Monster Zero. Keizer Ghidorah has basically nothing unless you want to count his transformation, which is a slight indication of regeneration, but it gets completely outclassed by Monster Zero. When getting his head severed by Godzilla, he was able to regenerate it completely in a matter of seconds. Some may say this wasn't in battle, so it doesn't count, but that's just not the case at all. Ghidorah, when using his wing lightning against Godzilla in Boston, it actually damaged Ghidorah himself, and was able to regenerate the holes in his wings instantaneously. Regeneration clearly and very easily goes to Monster Zero. Intelligence and battle intelligence. Starting off once again with Keizer Ghidorah. Well, Keizer Ghidorah doesn't really have anything to infer a high level of intelligence. Monster X knew martial arts. Moving on to battle intelligence, this is where we have something to cover. Monster X was able to utilize multiple forms of close quarters combat in fighting Godzilla. He was able to coordinate with Gigan to attack Godzilla, but we all know how that went thanks to Mothra. Keizer Ghidorah was able to utilize his anti-gravity beams with efficiency, knowing to throw Final Wars all over the place, bring him towards him in order to kick him, and beat down Final Wars. Moving on to Monster Zero's overall intelligence, all 3 of his heads are able to function with independent thought and act as their own person. He knew to retreat in the Arctic against Godzilla as he was backed by the military and Ghidorah had just woken up. In regards to battle intelligence, he was able to coordinate each individual head into a joint strike when he picked up Godzilla and slammed him into the ground. Monster Zero was able to understand that Godzilla was firing his atomic breath and evade it to counter it with his own beam. So, who gets overall intelligence? Monster Zero would take intelligence due to his showing of coordination and his individual heads having their own train of thought. Battle intelligence would go to Keizer Ghidorah thanks to his utilization of the anti-gravity beams and his weaker self Monster X being able to utilize multiple forms of combat. Lastly, we have abilities. Keizer Ghidorah has a solid arsenal, with his anti-gravity beams being able to not only show to overpower Godzilla's base beam, but throw objects affected by them around. His energy siphoning was utilized to drain the energy out of Godzilla. He's able to transform as shown when transforming into Keizer Ghidorah from Monster X. Moving on to Monster Zero, he's obviously able to fly, this being at slightly below the speed of sound. His gravity beams, while not as flashy as Keizer's, are shown to be more powerful than the anti-gravity beams, as Godzilla, and we all know how durable Monster vs. Godzilla is, was shown to have cuts and burns all over his body. He has a second lightning-based base attack with the wing lightning. This was shown to temporarily blind Godzilla and cut into his skin. He's able to generate category 6 hurricanes by merely existing. He has the Alpha Call, which he utilized in awakening all of the Titans. He surprisingly utilizes telepathy, as due to the long nature of his necks, needed to communicate with telepathy. One of his main attributes is his regeneration, which he excels in, as he was able to regenerate his heads in seconds and regenerate the holes in his wing, which were inflicted when he used the wing lightning. Just like with Keizer Ghidorah, he has energy absorption, except not only can he absorb it from other kaiju, he can siphon energy from anything electrical due to his bioelectrical nature. Clearly, Monster Zero takes abilities, as for one, he just has more abilities overall, and secondly, he has more useful abilities because obviously we know something like the Alpha Call won't be useful in battle. After going over the categories, Keizer Ghidorah takes battle intelligence. Monster Zero takes strength, speed, agility, physical capabilities, durability, regeneration, intelligence, and ability. The two kaiju tie respectively at ranged weaponry and physical capabilities. With a final score of 10-3, Monster Zero does take the win. The score may indicate that Monster Zero takes the win easily, but it's not as easy as the score makes it out to be. Keizer doesn't fall too behind Monster Zero in categories that Monster Zero wins. However, due to Keizer's extreme lack of speed and agility, paired with Monster Zero's higher durability and just as good if not slightly higher strength, Monster Zero at the end of the day does take the win. This is similar to our video with Monster vs. Godzilla vs. Final Wars Godzilla. Monster Zero seemingly just does everything Keizer Ghidorah does, but better. With another controversial topic, I'm sure there's going to be some disagreements, but hey, stats don't lie. As always, looks like we've reached the end of yet another video. If you enjoyed this video and enjoyed this style of content, consider subscribing. You guys have been absolutely crushing it, as we're over 15,000 subscribers, and I love doing this style of content. And if you guys want me to do a specific battle, let me know down in the comments. Once again, thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I'll see y'all in the next one.
I created a monster, cause nobody wants to see monster no more. They want shady, I'm chopped liver. Well, if you want shady, this is what I'll give you. A little